Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm finally making another question the narrative video. Once again, I apologize because they have been few and far between, but I will do them when I can. And this one I'm hoping that you will find extremely interesting. Just a side note, my neighbors are being a bit noisy today and I have my daughter upstairs playing Valorant again. And even though I asked her to be quiet, sometimes she forgets because she gets overexcited when she plays that game. And so we might hear her every once in a while as well. So today's question, the narrative topic is exploring the outer darkness. The outer darkness being that which is spoken of in the Bible. And so you might be wondering why I have this graphic from Logos Bible software here of the biblical model of the earth when I'm referring to the outer darkness, and I will get to that very shortly. But before I get to that, I did want to go back to the map that I had talked about in my last video. In this video, I talked about some of the hidden lands that are theorized, that are out there around the outside of what we know as Earth. There was actually another map, a very old map, as a matter of fact, a Buddhist map that also showed some hidden lands. And so I was told by some people that me exploring these outer lands, or at least the theory of the outer lands, is not biblical. And I'm not really sure how they make that assumption because the Bible does not tell us what the earth specifically looks like. It doesn't tell us that there are 7 continents. It doesn't tell us that the earth looks exactly like what we know it to be now. So I really think that when you think that just because people are postulating that there might be lands that have not been explored, that it's not biblical, that's almost coming from a place of arrogance because we are assuming that we know more than what people did years before. And like I said, that Buddhist map is very old. I'm not saying that any of them are accurate, but what I'm saying is that we have to be careful in assuming that we know everything because obviously we don't. And that's what this whole question the narrative series is about. And if you think about it, in biblical times, they had a very narrow view of what the world looked like to them. The earth in biblical times, it didn't even include 7 continents. And if you look, even in the time of Leif Erikson, he didn't know that, I believe it was Greenland existed, and they certainly didn't know until they found it that North America existed. Now, this is if you are listening to the mainstream historical viewpoint, which again, we know is kind of up for grabs. Same thing if you follow the Christopher Columbus story, it's said that they didn't realize that North America and South America existed either. So my point is that just because it isn't what we know of today, it certainly doesn't mean that it is unbiblical to think that there are hidden lands. Now, that is if you are coming from the viewpoint that the firmament, when the Lord placed the firmament over the earth, that it would have been placed over all the hidden lands as well. And that is really certainly a topic to explore another time. But I'm going to go back to what we would call the outer darkness. And that is really why I started out, let me see if I can find it, with this view. Now, this is, again, the biblical model of the earth. You can find it on Logos Bible software. And someone had mentioned this. Actually, a few people mentioned this in some of the comments from the last video that I made. And it is actually an idea that I myself had back in 2017 when I first started exploring the idea of what the flat earth could possibly be, if it could possibly be true. And I brainstormed and I wrote a bunch of ideas or questions that I had. And one of them was the idea that if the earth has this firmament over it, what is on the outside of it? And could the outside of the earth be what the Bible refers to as the outer darkness? So if you're not sure where I'm referring to in the Bible about the outer darkness, it's actually mentioned a few times, but one of them is in Matthew 22:13. It says, "Then said the king to the servants, bind him hand and foot and take him away and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And again, my question is, if we have a model of the earth, if we have, my daughter just screamed, if we have the earth and we have the actual dome over just what we know of as the earth, what is on the outside of it? Since it tells us that there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, it does describe an area there where there would be an absence of God. And if you think about it, when the Lord when the Lord created the earth and placed the firmament over it, this is what God created. And this is where we, the imagers of God, live. Now, from what we read in the Bible, the angels, the other beings that were created by the Lord, they do not have the gift of salvation that we have in Jesus Christ. But would that mean that what we have in here actually has light, because we do have the light of Christ here in the earth, and the darkness here could be a separation from the Lord? And again, this is all speculation, but that's really all that my Question the Narrative series is. I have to say that again. I have people all the time just saying, "Oh, well, why should we believe you?" I don't want you to believe me. I'm trying to bring up ideas so that you start asking questions too. And I honestly think that thinking about these things is fun. It's exciting, and it's good to keep your brain working and to not just constantly swallow everything that we're told. So now, what is the official explanation for the outer darkness? So it says, in the parable of the wedding feast, Jesus tells of a wedding crasher of sorts. A man in the wedding hall was discovered to have entered the feast without authorization. Jesus says that the king, the master of the feast, issued a dire command concerning the interloper: bind him hand and foot and cast him into the outer darkness. Jesus uses the term outer darkness in the parable to describe a condition of great sorrow, loss, and woe. It stands in vivid contrast to the brightly lit and joyous celebration attended by those who accepted the king's invitation. Interpreting the wedding feast as heaven, the outer darkness must be the place of eternal punishment. Most Bible scholars agree that the phrase outer darkness refers to hell, or more properly, the lake of fire. Now here we have Matthew 8:12 says, "While the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness, in that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Now when you see fiery furnace, to me that would mean that it would be a place with light, because when you think of fire, you think of light, don't you? But we're going to get back to that point in a little bit. And the fact that what I am thinking of what might be outside of the firmament would be black, just complete darkness. And yes, fiery furnace could still apply to that. And I will explain that to you in just a bit. Here we have again, "And throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And I don't actually think that one said anything about either of those. So the outer darkness of Jesus' parable is called blackest darkness. And again, I'm picturing blackest darkness. I am picturing what we are told space looks like, outer space. Now, depending on which astronaut you listen to, because some of them tell you that there are stars everywhere, while others will tell you that it's the deepest black and that you can't see any stars anywhere, which is funny in itself. But I am picturing what we are told of is space. That's what I'm picturing of as being outside of what would be the dome, so to speak. So again, a place of judgment is the obvious meaning, since it is reserved for godless men. Perhaps the place of judgment is pictured as dark because of the absence of God's cheering presence. When you hide your face, they are terrified. God is called light, and if he withdraws his blessing, only darkness is left. Throughout the scriptures, light symbolizes God's purity, holiness, and glory. Darkness is used as a symbol of moral depravity. Darkness can also refer to trouble and affliction, and to death and nothingness. And my question is, could this also be the place where could this be the demonic realm? Could this be where the fallen angels reside? So many questions that I have. So if the firmament is placed only over this part here, could these lands actually be here, and could they be inhabited? But could they be inhabited by those who have fallen from favor with God? And a lot of people have been mentioning the summer gate, and it's not really something that I've ever really looked into much. I want to, though. But if this summer gate would exist, could this be the place where they're exploring, or where they're going through when they say that they are exploring outer space? Could they actually just be exploring the realm outside of the dome? And could that be why space shuttles, when you see them going up into the air, they start moving to the side, or going sideways instead of straight up? And they will tell you that it's following the curvature of the earth. But could it actually be because they actually are going sideways, because they're not going up? They're headed toward the summer gate. I don't know. This is all speculation, and again, something really fun to think about, at least in my opinion. Now, since I am postulating that what is outside of the dome could be the outer darkness, or what they even refer to as outer space, it just might not be what we think of as outer space. I just wanted to point out something very interesting that I came across. So when you look up signs of demonic activity, and remember, I just said that it's possible that that could be the demonic realm out there, the outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, where there is an absence of God, an absence of light. And one of the signs of it is a smell of, you will see, foul, rotten odors without a source, such as human waste, rotten flesh, or sulfur. And this is what I want you to think about right now. The sulfur, because a lot of times you will hear about possessions, you will hear about so-called hauntings, and they will tell you that there is a smell of sulfur or brimstone associated with this sort of activity. Then I happened across this article a while back, and I wanted to talk about it here on my channel, and I got sidetracked and never actually mentioned it, I don't think. But NASA designed perfume captures smell of outer space. I'm not going to read the whole article, but I wanted to read this part to you. Former astronaut Chris Hadfield told Wired magazine that space smells sort of like brimstone, as if a witch had just been there. I kid you not. Yeah, astronaut Chris Hadfield. Space smells like brimstone. What is brimstone? Brimstone is sulfur, as if a witch had just been there. So what they are referring to as space smells like what could very well be a demonic realm. Now we're going to go back to it being called the fiery furnace. And when you think of a fiery furnace, you think of light, don't you? Not outer darkness, not complete blackness. So I decided to look up the temperature of space. And it's actually it's a complicated explanation, because there's a difference between heat and temperature. And I'll leave the links for all of this in the description. But this is what they say is the what it's like in space. And again, this is all, take it with a grain of salt, because we just don't know. But when you think of a fiery furnace, obviously you're going to think of great heat. And then I found this. What happens to your body if exposed to this space? And they're talking about what they say is the vacuum of space. And so what I would say is the vacuum of possibly the outer darkness, the vacuum of what could be outside of the dome. And it says that, let me just go down. Again, I'll leave the link because I don't want to keep dragging it on. During a test in a vacuum chamber at NASA's Johnson Space Flight Center in Texas, a leaky spacesuit exposed one of the astronauts to near complete vacuum. Again, they tell you that space is a vacuum. So what you're thinking of as space, just kind of transpose that with what we're thinking of as outer darkness, outside the dome. So they claim it's a vacuum. If they've gone through the summer gate or found some way to get through there, have they explored it? I don't know. But they do say it's a vacuum. He became unconscious in a matter of seconds until he was resuscitated. After regaining consciousness, the astronaut said that the last thing he remembered before blacking out was the sensation of saliva boiling in his mouth. His saliva was boiling in his mouth. Could that be referred to as a fiery furnace? Could that be referred to even as weeping and gnashing of teeth? And here's a nice little graphic, your tongue in a vacuum. the vacuum that they say space is, the vacuum that very well could be what's outside of the firmament. And while there could be an absence of light, there's certainly an absence of light in what they tell us space is. Yet they're telling us that his saliva was boiling in his mouth. So you obviously don't need light to have that much heat. Could this be what is possibly going on outside of the firmament? And one last thing that I wanted to just get into, I mentioned that it could be the abode of the fallen. And I found it very interesting that all of the planets are named after Roman gods, with exception to Earth, okay? And I find this very, very telling because Earth, I'm circling Mars and I'm saying Earth, duh. Anyway, you can tell I'm not like paying attention to what I'm looking at. But anyway, so we have Earth here, and supposedly this is what was created. Now, obviously the Earth was created by God. I'm not saying that it looks like this, but I'm just going to use this graphic because it shows us the name of the other planets, and Earth is the only one that is not named after a Roman god. And the funny thing is that Roman gods are associated with the Nephilim. Typically, it's more Greek gods, they will tell you, but Greek gods and Roman gods, they're the same. They just have different names. You know, one name for a Greek god and one name for the Roman god. So, for example, Zeus would be Jupiter, and Saturn would be Hades, and so on. So it's interesting that we have this land outside of the firmament, or at least outside of what we know as Earth. And someone mentioned, could that be actually what they're exploring and telling us that they're on these other planets? Planets that happen to be named after Roman gods that have an association with the Nephilim, who are the offspring of the fallen angels. And isn't it funny that the one, quote, planet that is not named after a Roman god is that which has the imagers of God living on it? Those who have the gift of salvation that none of these other places have. Chuck Missler did some excellent work on the association between the Greek Titans and the fallen angels, or the Nephilim. And this just talks a little bit about some of the things that he said. Sons of God equals angels, according with the understanding of early writers. And it just tells you some of these writers here. The Greek Titans. Now remember, it's just interchangeable with Roman. It's just the names are different. Partly terrestrial, partly celestial, like the Nephilim. The Nephilim were the offspring of fallen angels and human women. They rebelled against their father. After a prolonged contest, were defeated and condemned into Tartarus. And Tartarus I talked about in another video. So Titan equals, I'm not even going to try to say that, Satan, who will speak by, Hebrew, according to Chuck Missler, who will speak by himself in the next articles. I have no idea what that's. Oh, Shaitan. That's what it's saying. So that Titan could mean the same thing as these two. And then it just goes on to say that Titans are present in the traditions of so many other civilizations. So that's how we get this association with all of the gods, not even just the Greek and Roman, but so many different civilizations have what we would think of as Titans or giants, Nephilim, sons of God. And again, I have to point out that we go back to the whole idea that all the, quote, planets, those things that they say they are exploring, are named after these gods, aka Nephilim, those who do not have sanctification. Yet here on earth, we have that gift. So the very last thing that I found super interesting that I just wanted to show you, because I have heard of all of these Roman gods, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and I knew who they were, but wait, is Saturn Hades? I actually think Pluto is Hades. Anyway, I don't know, I'm not sure. But Uranus, I was thinking, okay, I don't remember who Uranus would have been in Greek mythology. So I decided to look up Uranus. And so good old Wikipedia says about Uranus. In Greek mythology, Uranus, sometimes written Oranos, is the personification of the sky and one of the Greek primordial deities. According to Hesiod, Uranus was the son and husband of Gaia the Earth, with whom he fathered the first generation of Titans. So when I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking, okay, Uranus was the son and husband of Gaia the Earth. He was the personification of the sky. So I'm thinking of Uranus as a fallen angel who had children with the women of Earth. And he fathered the first generation of Titans. Who were the Titans? The Titans were the Nephilim. So again, we have all of these connections. And then between the Nephilim and the Titans, and then we have all of our planets, which are supposedly being explored, named after these Roman gods. And now we're finding all of these links between with outer lands, the smells of what they say is space. It just makes for a really interesting rabbit trail. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.